QB Power Hour. Today we're discussing best practices for job costing in QuickBooks. Thank you for joining us again today. My name is Michelle Long, and we've got Hector Garcia joining us today. What we're going to be talking about is, first of all, we're going to go over some introductions and announcements briefly. Then we're going to get in and talk about job costing on the desktop version of QuickBooks. Hector's going to cover that part for you. Then we're going to talk about the aspect from QuickBooks Online perspective. Can you or can you not do job costing with QuickBooks Online? I'm going to help clarify that question and tell you what to look out for. Then we have a special guest with us today. We've got Victoria Horn from TSheets, a great third-party app. Actually, it's the #1 rated app in the Intuit App Center in the App Store. So it's the #1 app. It's great if you have employees that want to track their time and be able to enter that information and integrate it with QuickBooks Payroll. So you're going to hear from them and about their new certification program that they have towards the bottom of the hour. For those of you that don't know me yet, my name is Michelle Long, and I'm glad to say I am back in the USA today. I was up in Canada earlier this week and joining you on the last Power Hour from Canada, but I'm back here today. And I'd encourage you to join the LinkedIn group. You'll notice down there towards the bottom, write that link down, tinyurl.com/QBgroup. tinyurl.com/QBgroup, because there are literally hundreds of you on here today. And so I'm not going to be able to answer all your questions, and Hector can't answer all your questions. We can't talk that fast. Somebody says they're not seeing my screen. Let me go ahead and start that again. Thank you, guys. Mary and Peter and Anita and Bob, thank you for telling me you could see your screen. It's coming now. Evidently, when I started the recording, it paused that screen share. There you go. Okay. But join that LinkedIn group, because it's a great resource when you have lots of questions and we can't answer all of them. There's over 101,000 members now, so somebody will be able to answer your question. And we also have Hector Garcia with us today. He's a CPA down in Miami, Florida, and he is wonderful. He does a lot of training down there. He's got QuickBooks in Your Own Classroom. He does both QuickBooks and Excel training. He is a real guru. He's got a master of finance and tax, and he's way smarter than I am, so I'm glad to have Hector as a partner with this. He's also a member of the Trainer Writer Network as well for Intuit. A few announcements. First of all, about the QB Power Hour. If this is your first time joining us, we do this roughly every 2 weeks. We were thrown off a little bit with the Thanksgiving holiday in the U.S. next week. We changed it just a tad, but glad to have you joining us. We cover tips and tricks and advanced insights in each one of these Power Hours. We try to cover half desktop and half online because we realize people are using different platforms. We always will try to have a special guest or sponsor that we pick specifically with information relevant to that topic that we think would be helpful for you all as accounting professionals or small business owners to help you. Today we've got TSheets, as we mentioned. If you want to provide any feedback, go to qbpowerhour.com, and that's how we come up with these topics, is based on what you all want to hear and learn more about. It's all about you and helping you to learn more about QuickBooks. So, as for CPE, if you are a CPA or a certified bookkeeper, or you need continuing education credits for your certification, then you need to attend the live webinar right now for at least 50 minutes. During this webinar, we're going to give you a CPE password or keyword. You need to write that down. Towards the end of the webinar, we will have a poll question where we're going to ask you to answer the poll question and enter that keyword. And then you need to allow about 3 weeks for those CPE certificates to be emailed to you. So put a reminder on your calendar for 3 weeks from today to check for that. And if you don't see it, then follow up with us and you'll get that. But it does take time because there's lots of you that need CPE credits. So give us 3 weeks to get those processed. Now, a couple of other announcements. December 3rd is when the new QuickBooks certifications are going to be available for Pro Advisors. If you're not a member of the Pro Advisor program yet, I encourage you to join. The Cloud Pro Advisor program is free, and it also has a brand new advanced certification for QuickBooks Online. We've had the desktop certification in the past, and now there's a new QBO advanced certification, not for the faint of heart. These advanced exams are difficult by design. It means something when you pass those. Those will be in your course locker on December 3rd. Also, there's a brand new redesigned and fully integrated QuickBooks Online Accountant coming in December. This is amazing. I love it. It's really going to help us with our practice And I think we're going to have an Intuit product manager joining us to tell you more about QuickBooks Online Accountant and show you that. But watch for that and watch for emails about that. That's going to be coming in December. The QuickBooks VCon and the live certification tour, those things are both coming up in December, starting in December. Hector and I both are going to be part of the live QBO tour. Hector, I know, is going to some of the cities down in the south. I'm going to some down in Texas and California on the West Coast. I think I'm doing Chicago. But go out there to IntuitAcademy.com. If you're not certified in QuickBooks Online already, join us in one of these live cities for that certification training. Our next QBO Power Hour is going to be on Thursday, December 4th. We're going to be working on that topic, and I actually am doing a keynote in Seattle on that day and talking also over their lunch break. So I'm going to have to check the time, but Hector may have to do most of that one for me. Then we've got another Power Hour that Hector and I are working on December 18th. We want this to be a special episode to help you get ready for 2015. We're going to select 5 acts that will really help transform your practice in 2015. So stay tuned for that. If you're already registered for this one today, you're also registered for these upcoming Power Hours. So I hope that you'll be able to join us for those as well. Now, I do have a quick polling question here that we wanted to ask you guys. Do you currently use or specialize in construction or the contract or work with lots of contractors? If you could answer this poll question, that would be fabulous. I would love to hear where you guys are at. And one of the things that I like to say about the QuickBooks, using job costing for QuickBooks, it's not just construction and contractors. Any service-based business that wants to track their expenses by customer or by job, you can do that. So for example, let's say you have somebody who's done an event planning and they plan weddings and cater events and things like that. They want to track their expenses by customer. Maybe you have other service-based businesses like lawn and landscape, or architects or engineers or anybody that wants to track expenses by customer. They can use the job costing. So although we're asking about construction and contractors, that's the most prevalent use for job costing, but not the only use for job costing. So we've got almost 90% of you that have answered this. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll. And let's close it, and I'm going to share the results so you can see. We have 15% that specialize quite a bit. We got 28% that say somewhat, 20% say not yet, and another 36% say no. Okay, well, that's very interesting. Usually one of the top industries that people will specialize are construction and contracting and things like that. I have lots of you saying that my sound is not very good, so I'm going to switch over to Hector here in just a minute, and I will plug it into something else to see what's wrong with my headset. So let me go ahead and hide that poll, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Hector, and I will switch my headset and see if that helps some. So Hector, your turn. Here you go. Hector, are you there? There we go. I can see your screen, Hector, but I can't hear you. Unmute yourself. Somebody says I'm turning my head, but my headset should be turning right along with my head because I have it on my head. Somebody else says they hear me just fine. So Hector, I can see your screen, but I can't hear you. Let me unmute you, Hector. Okay. There you are. Okay, go for it.
You guys can hear me?
I can hear you and see you.
Okay, all right, perfect. Okay, so let me just zoom this in a little bit. So first thing I wanted to mention is when we talk about job costing, we are not talking about construction industry only or contractor industry only. However, job costing very often shows up on these type of industries. Now, if I really wanted to go in depth in job costing and teach an entire class about job costing, we would actually keep in mind that all these bullet points you're seeing on the screen, this would be a good one to take a screenshot of. These are all the things that come across. These are all sort of the things that you need to know and need to learn in order to really do a consultation, a complete consultation in job costing. Things like payroll expenses. Are you going to labor burden the payroll taxes, labor burden the workers' comp? You have to make that choice. Are you using an outside payroll service or employee leasing? Do you need certified payroll reports? Billable, non-billable items, work in progress, completion percentage. All these things come across. Even the very last one. If you've never seen an AIA G702, spreadsheet or a AIAG 703 spreadsheet, Google it, look it up, because this is what contractors use in order to schedule their payment and things like that, especially when they're dealing with government contracts. So we cannot cover all these topics in a single episode. Like this, it will turn QB Power Hour into QB Power Day, right? So we're going to pick a narrow set of topics here. I'm going to narrow it to 4, these are the 4 most commonly used, the most commonly asked for. So expenses not assigned to jobs. So we'll start with that. Let me switch over to my QuickBooks file here. And Michelle, just give me some feedback. Can you see my desktop, QuickBooks desktop?
Yes, Hector, we can see your desktop.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let me just close this up real quick. So for the people that are unfamiliar with job costing and allocating expenses by job, basically in a nutshell, we're talking about pulling a report called a profit and loss by job and being able to see all the jobs, and I'm just going to hit a collapse here and compress it. So being able to view every single job as its own profit and loss, right? And then we can go in detail, we can go in summary. This is an example of a summary. So this is the premise here. The purpose of us doing job costing or any of these functions is so we can look at a gross profit or even a net profit by job. So the first report I want to talk about is this one called expenses not assigned to jobs. So that should be here in the, let's see, expenses not assigned to job. As a matter of fact, okay, that's good that it came up. So this is something that would only be in the Contractor edition of QuickBooks. And if you have the Accountant edition, it would be sort of buried under the industry-specific report, the Contractor reports. So this one here is called expenses not assigned to jobs. So I'll start with this one. Now, so what this report does, and what's a little bit confusing about this, what this report does is it has a hidden filter that you really can't see. So if I go to filters here, it has a hidden filter that basically only shows you expenses that don't have a job allocated to that. So what does an expense not with a job allocated to it mean? It means that I go into this check, for example, and I don't have a customer here on this side. So basically, this hidden filter that's only triggered by this specific report will only render the transactions that do not have a job associated with them. Okay, so simply to assign an expense to a job, it is as simple as just hitting the drop-down menu and selecting the job. So so that's basically in a nutshell how you do some job costing. Let me grab this other expense here, which is a credit card expense, right? So this one right here, let me see. There's this line here, which is a 0. And then in this report, it shows a 0. That's why it shows up on the report. So that's interesting. This one, it's a line item that shows on the report, but with a 0 value, because it was used on a transaction, right? Even though it's a 0 value, it's still a line item, and it's got no customer job in it. So that's basically what makes these things happen. Now, the other important thing about job costing is that typically, I would say 95% of times, and I'll invite Michelle to give me her opinion on that as well, 95% of the time, people tend to job cost of goods sold. So they job cost direct expenses. They don't typically job cost things like overhead, right? That's typically not job costed because overhead by definition is something not related to jobs. So that's an important concept to kind of keep in mind here. So let me do a profit and loss by job in this case, but I'm going to filter it down to just a single job so I can do the entire example. So that was expenses not assigned to job. The next one we're going to look at is job estimates versus actual. Now, this particular example is the one that's going to take the longest. As a matter of fact, if this takes my entire time, we may not cover work in progress and committed costs, which are enterprise-only features. But I like really hitting home job estimates versus actuals because it's the single most important concept in here. So let me get started by setting up an estimate. Step number 1, you cannot work a report called job estimates versus actuals if you don't have an estimate. The absence of an estimate will completely render the attempt to do that report useless because it basically doesn't have an estimate to pull from. So let me create a new customer. We'll do a customer test here. Okay, this is for the example. The other piece that's extremely important for this is your estimate template must, absolutely must, have the markup column open. So what do I mean by that? If you're working off an estimate like this one, actually this one's not a good example. Okay, all three of these have it. So let me show you what it would look like without it. So if you were to change the format here, and here under columns, you have this internal cost and the markup. If you had markup turned off, and I'll show you, if I have markup turned off, I don't have the ability to state my internal estimated cost on that particular item. That will completely render this exercise useless. So that's a very important thing. So if you're new to this, this is an important point. Your estimate must include that markup column. Now, that markup column doesn't have to print. Your customer does not have to see that, obviously, but it has to be able to be worked in on the estimate on the proposal. So that's step number one. Okay, so step number two is I need to make sure that whatever items I'm working on, they must be double-sided items, okay? So we're going to, let's call this, for example, wall installation, right? I cannot just create this as a single-sided item. I must hit this weird check mark here that has very strange explanation, just, you know, sub-assembly, subcontractor partner, you know, sometimes that doesn't make any sense, but either way, you have to make sure you hit this little checkbox and that it opens up the item to be a two-sided item. The expense account is typically going to go into something in the cost of goods sold world, right? Because if it's an item in an estimate, there's going to be some sort of direct expense towards using up that item. So in this case, wall installation is sort of a labor type of expense. So let's assume, for example, that we hire subcontractors, and we're going to put that in the subcontractor cost of goods sold expense. Now, on the income account, right, it would be construction income, anything like this. It doesn't really matter. Sorry, as long as I hit any income account, it should be fine, okay? So this is my cost side is going to cost of goods sold. My income side is going to an income account. The initial cost and the sales price, that doesn't matter. That's probably going to vary by job anyway. So we'll hit OK. So that's lesson number two. Lesson number one, markup must be in there. Lesson number two, the item must be double-sided, okay? So let's say, for example, that I think this is going to take me about 12 hours, and rate in this case is my internal cost. So my subcontractor, let's say, is going to charge me $45 per hour. Now, my complete total, my out-the-door sales price needs to include my markup. So if I'm going to charge my client, let's say, $120, I have to make sure that in this markup, I include $120 in this case times 12. Okay, so it's a total markup, not per item, but for the entire amount of $14.40. Now, this is non-taxable, so I'll take this out of the way. So what this particular thing is telling me is I'm estimating my internal cost to be $45 per hour, $540. I'm estimating to make $14.40 in profit, and what I'm supposed to charge my client is $19.80. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and save that. So we'll save and close. So how does it work? When I go to reports, jobs, time, and mileage, I'm going to go to job estimate versus actual summary. Okay, and it's going to give me all my jobs, right? So if I just focus on the very first one, which is customer text, let me make this font a little bit bigger here. So I focus just on this first one. I see it very clearly. I'm supposed to spend $540 in this job. I have spent nothing so far. I'm supposed to invoice $19.80. I have invoiced nothing so far. Okay? So I'm going to leave this report open because we're going to refer to it later on. As a matter of fact, we're just going to go ahead and filter it. So we're only looking at that customer test, and we're not really looking at anything else. Okay? So that's all we're focusing is on this particular job. So let's say I'm going to job cost and expense, which is as simple as writing a check to whoever you're going to write a check to, and you choose the item. In this case, let's say this is my subcontractor that I use for this job. So I'm going to make sure I don't hit the expense account, because if I hit the expense account, I'm going to get some really strange behavior on the report. I'm going to hit the item account so the report itself can tie that expense to that original item in the estimate. So we're going to come in here and let's say we actually pay these guys 13 hours, not 14 hours. For whatever reason, this is just what it ends up being, right? So I have to pay him 13 hours, not 12 hours. I'm still making money, so not a big deal. And then on the most important piece, I need to job cost it, right? Which means I basically I'm going to select the customer that this expense is going to be assigned to. So I hit save and close, right? And then I can see now in real time what's happening. My actual costs are over my estimated cost. I can actually go to customize report, and add the percentage as well to kind of tell me where I stand. So I'm actually over 8% on my estimated cost. Okay, so take some time to digest that for a second. That means that I did not hit my goal, right? I went over budget. Now let's talk about the invoicing piece. So let's go into the original estimate here. So I'm going to go into estimates, and I'll go back to that estimate. Of course, it's not going to be right there easy for me, so let me look it up. Okay, there it is. And let's say I'm going to convert this to an invoice. So I'm going to go to convert to invoice, and I'll convert it 100%. But let's say that for whatever reason, I really couldn't charge my client the entire amount, or maybe I had to give him some sort of discount because we messed something up or something. So I'm going to leave my 12 hours in there, but I'm maybe going to lower my rate by maybe $200. So what I'll do is I'll do another separate line for the same wall installation, and I'll just flat discount it for $200. So I'll just put here for repairs incurred by client or something like that, right? So now I'm basically reducing, and I make sure I take away sales tax from this calculation. So let me put here. Okay, so now in this particular case, I'm actually invoicing a lot less than what I was, or not a lot less, but less of what I wanted to invoice in the first place. So I'm going to hit save and close. And then what happens with this report? Now, it looks, I'm still profitable, by the way, but based on what I wanted to make, I'm actually seeing my percentage difference and my percentage difference on the invoice and on the revenue side. Make sure this shows in here. So this is a sort of a more of an operating report than a profitability report. This is not about being profitable or not. This is about hitting your target that you're supposed to invoice and target that you're supposed to pay. And the job profitability report that you will see in tandem with this would be that job profitability detail report. So I'm going to go to job profitability detail, and I'll select customer test. And this will actually give me this breakdown, right? So I can actually see per item how much I actually paid and how much I actually invoiced, and that's my new profit. Okay, so if I go back to my original estimate here for a second, and it looks like I won't have time to do the other examples, but I think these will work pretty well here. So let me go to customer test. So originally I was estimated to make $14.40 on this deal, and I ended up making $19.95. So this is actually a pretty interesting report to look at. Okay, and you can also look at the percentage difference here. So you can actually see, and this is markup, not margin. That's an important. So I'm actually having 204% of my actual cost as a markup to my revenue. So that's kind of how these things behave. Now I think I do have, Michelle, another 5 minutes. You let me know if there's questions, or if I need to stop, just interrupt me. Okay? All right. So as I go along here, I'm going to show you something else about job costing. Now, what happens if I fail to use an item? Okay, if I fail to use the actual item and I actually hit the account directly. Okay, let's see what happens with that behavior. So if I hit the account directly, let's say, for example, I ended up having to pay some job materials or something that I wasn't expecting. So let's say we had to go to Home Depot, so we'll do Home Depot here. Okay, so we go to Home Depot, and I ended up having to pay $125 worth of materials. I wasn't really expecting it, but it just happened. And then I also have to job cost this. Now, what I'm trying to show you is what happens if I use the account instead of the item as I instructed at the beginning. So I'll hit save and close here. What ends up happening is when I look at a detailed report, not this one. So the job estimate versus actual, it still shows me that cost correct. When I go to the detailed report, now I have this new row that says no item, and that's basically what happens. So what ends up happening, a lot of my clients, they freak out about this. They're like, wait a minute, what do you mean no item? And everything starts getting convoluted. So what if I had used an item that, so let's say we're going to do it correctly. We are going to use an item. So instead of using this right here, we're going to use an item that we're supposed to. Let me clear this out. I'm going to use an item that we're supposed to, but it's an item that was not on the original sort of estimate in the first place. So let's look for some, we'll pick something similar here. So let's say non-inventory part, and we had to end up using right here some counters. I guess those are the materials. So I'm using a non-inventory part, $125. This is the same thing, but instead of using the account, I'm just simply using the item. I'm going to hit save and close here, and show you what happens. So what ends up happening is when I look at my detail report here, let me just refresh it. I do want to make sure that I did job cost that one. I want to make sure I didn't miss that somehow. So let's go 125. There's my check to Home Depot. There's my item. Yep, I forgot to job cost it. There you go, customer test. Hit save and close. And then we'll look at this report. So what ends up happening is now I see another line item with an actual cost and no actual revenue because I'm not really making any money on this item. So this kind of starts allowing you to see where is it that you're losing out or what you should have included on the estimate in the first place. On the other report, which is the other one we're working on, the estimate versus actual summary, and I'm going to come in here. Actually, it wasn't summary. I apologize. It's the detail. So I'm going to go to that one and I'll do the detail one for the customer. So what ends up happening is here it tells you estimated cost 0. So that means that you are difference. Obviously, 100% of it is the difference. So I wanted to show you that there's committed cost reports and work in progress reports that are introduced in QuickBooks Enterprise, which you can actually see on this section here, but I just don't have enough time to go over them. So I'd like to answer some questions. Michelle, if you can trigger some questions up for me.
Yes, got some good questions there. We've got some about what happens if you uncheck the bill to customer box when it's still tracking the job, but not billable.
Great question. Great question. So what this is measuring is what is hitting your expense account or what's hitting your cost of goods sold account. This is not measuring whether or not you're marking it billable. So if you mark it billable, all it means is it's going to remind you to make sure you charge the client for it. If you don't mark it billable, if you uncheck it, all it does is it doesn't remind you to invoice it. It does not affect job cost.
Good point. Yeah, it's going to show up as an expense whether it's billable or not allocated to the customer. So, Hector, that was a great job. Unfortunately, we don't have too much time to continue on. We've had people asking if we could do the whole day on construction and contracting. So we may want to consider doing an expanded webinar, maybe for a couple of hours on this topic because people are impressed. But it's my turn, Hector. I want to share with them how some of this works in QBO. I'm going to take back over control here and show my screen. And while we're doing that, actually, we need to do the CPE keyword, pig. I'm not sure why Hector chose pig. Do you want to tell us why you chose pig for the keyword today?
Because in Miami, in Christmas, that's all we eat.
Oh, really? Okay. I just think
in Miami, everybody eats pig all Christmas long, pig everywhere.
Okay.
And I wanted to add one more thing, Michelle, while the CPE question is up. One very important thing. We don't know what people want just by inertia. Like we need people to go to qbpowerhour.com and go to suggest a topic and suggest what they want. If we have a huge amount of people telling us via the chat that they want construction, that we don't have really a permanent record of that, but if you do submit it on the website, we know, and we try to pick the topics. And especially the sponsors like TSheets is going to talk about, payroll job costing, which is another super important piece of this. So we try to also tie these things in with what people want. So please log into the website and give us suggestions.
Okay, very good, Hector. And I'm going to go ahead and toggle back over. So you've got that CPE keyword written down. The word is pig. Now I'm going to be talking about job costing with QuickBooks Online. First of all, you do need to have QBO Plus. There's Simple Start, Essentials, and Plus. You need the Plus version for this. You need to go into company settings and turn it on, and I'm going to show you that in just a minute. And we do have some conflicting information that's available out there when it comes to job costing in QuickBooks Online. Intuit says QBO cannot do job costing. It doesn't support job costing. Yet you can do some job costing. Some people say, oh, yeah, you can do everything, and they will talk to you about some workarounds, but those workarounds may not really be feasible for your clients. So we're going to talk about some of this in QBO. I'm going to show you some of this, let you know what you can do and what some of the limitations are before you try to convert a client to QBO and implement job costing with them at this time. So let me go ahead and get into QBO because that's easier for me to show you these things. First of all, you need to go into the company settings, and you need to make sure that you've got the settings turned on to enable the job costing. So under the settings and expenses, we want to go in here, and there's a couple things we want to check. We want to make sure we check this right here, sorry about that, where it shows items, the items table. We want to be able to enter in items so that we can track two-sided or double-sided items, like Hector mentioned. When you use items, that helps to ensure people are posting things to the same account all the time, because you set up the items or the products and services, you set those up and map them to the right item. Plus, you want to be able to see those items on reports to get better information. We also want to check this box to track the expenses by customer. Maybe we want to make the expenses and items billable. Are you passing those costs through to the customer, or is it a fixed fee job where you don't want to make that item billable? If it is billable, do you want to set a default markup percentage? Do you want to, by default, mark it up 20%? Do you want to track your billable expenses and items as income? Some people want the billable expenses to offset one another. Some people want to track it separately, track it as income and track it as expenses. And you can do all of this in the desktop version as well. Hector just didn't take the time to go in under the company preferences and show you that, but you can do that in there as well. So first of all, you want to set up your preferences and turn that on. Now, let's go ahead and let's record an expense. I'm going to make an expense to, let's get this to come up, and now it decided to be slow a little bit here today. Let's just choose a test vendor, and down here's where I want the items table to show up. So let's say I want to choose cabinet poles, and I'm going to buy 50 cabinet poles, and let's say they're $5 a piece. Do I want to make it billable or not? Do I want to have a markup percentage? Is it taxable or not? Let's go ahead and make it taxable, and let's make it to a job cost customer. Okay, so that way I can find this customer at the top of my list, quick and easy. I could assign that as a class if I wanted to. So because I'm making it billable, when I go to create that invoice, I'm going to see that pull through on an invoice. I'm going to go ahead and click Save and Close. So you enter your expenses as they're incurred. You're going through, you're paying for supplies, you're paying for materials. Maybe you wrote a check to a subcontractor. You're allocating all of those expenses to the job. Whether they're billable or not, you want to go ahead and allocate them to that job. Now when I come in here and choose a job cost customer, watch what's going to happen on the right-hand side of my screen. When I click a job cost, notice how that slides over right here. This slides across anything that you've marked as billable. It slides in to remind you that you should put that onto your invoice. So I can then also add additional lines if I wanted to, and maybe I had some hours for some work that I wanted to put, 5 hours at $150 an hour. I could add some additional stuff out there as well. So you can pull in those billable expenses. I'm going to go ahead and save this, and now I want to show you what the reports look like, because that's where we start seeing some of this information. And one of the first things that people see when they go under their reports is they say, I don't see the job's time and mileage reports like I do with the desktop. How do I do this? Where do I see my expenses by job and my income by job? And it is a little different. What we want to do is you can click on Review Sales. So under All Reports, let's review our sales. And over here, see where it says Income by Customer? I could do my sales by product or service if I wanted to see how many cabinet poles I had sold or how many hours of labor I had sold. I can also, though, the Income by Customer Summary. Let's see what we can see in here. This is going to show me for a job cost customer. See this one right here? There's the invoiced amount, and there's the expense when I purchase those cabinet poles. So it will show you your income and expense. See if I pull that up, you'll see I've got that $250 there for those cabinet poles. I can keep drilling down until I see that expense that I entered for them on the cabinet poles. So you can get income and expense by customer. I also can get, let's go back to all of my reports and show you another one, because I can also get a profit and loss by customer, but again, I don't see a P&L by job in here. And that's another thing. Under your customers, you create a sub-customer. It's not called a job. It's called a sub-customer, but we'll still call it a job because that's what we're used to. But you can then come in here, you create your profit and loss, then we want to customize it and click on lists. So after you customize it, we want to filter by list by a certain customer. I want to choose my job cost customer. This is going to allow me to get a P&L by that customer or that job. And I have no data in here. Let's choose all dates because I had it pulling last month. And now you can see here's my P&L by job. So I can get some basic job costing with QuickBooks Online. With QuickBooks Online Plus, let me add that preface to it. However, here's where some of the limitations come into play. If I need to allocate payroll to the jobs, if I have subcontractors that I write a check, it's no big deal because when I enter that expense or I enter that check or that bill for my subcontractors, I can allocate them to the jobs, and that's not going to be a problem. The problem arises when I have an employee and I want to do my time tracking and my payroll and have the labor allocated to the jobs. At this time, it doesn't do that. You cannot allocate labor, fully burdened payroll. Let me say payroll, not labor, because it could be subcontractors. Fully burdened payroll doesn't get allocated to the jobs at this time. However, people like TSheets and other apps, and we're going to talk to TSheets in just a minute, that works for the desktop version, and they're working on that for the QBO version. So that's where QBO is updated every month, and apps like TSheets get updated all the time as well. So they're working on that, and they're trying to get that. But as of right now, that's not there. We're going to hear from TSheets, and they're going to show us how their job costing and how TSheets can help with that in just a minute. But another thing that I wanted to point out to you, in addition to this, is, oh, I just had brain freeze. Oh, the downloaded transactions. Sorry, I had to check my list because I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. The downloaded transactions. If you have clients who enter bills and write checks and enter transactions in QuickBooks first, this isn't that big of a deal because if they enter the bill and the transaction or the check in QuickBooks first, then you can allocate it to the particular customer or job without any problem. However, if you have clients that are out using their debit and credit cards and they have lots of downloaded transactions and they want to use the benefit of these downloaded transactions to add those credit card purchases or whatever into QuickBooks without entering it in QuickBooks first, here's the problem you have. Let's say there's this Air Express here. I can come in here and I can choose a payee, I can choose a class, I can assign it to a location, I can do all this stuff. I can assign a class or location. I can't assign a customer or a job. I cannot allocate it to a particular customer or job, and I can't make it billable. I would have to add this transaction, then go back in and edit that transaction to assign it to a particular customer or job. So it's a bit cumbersome, and I've asked Intuit to get us this ability to assign it to a customer or a sub-customer in here. You guys can help me with that by clicking on the gear and manage users. But as of today, you need to be aware of that. You're going to lose some of those efficiencies from the downloaded transactions because you can't assign a customer job at this time. So I wanted to make you aware of some of those limitations, but you can use it for the basic job costing. Another thing that you're going to read about is, or hear about or whatever, if you're researching job costing at QBO, is the topic of progress invoicing. I can create an estimate, and I can create an invoice. Once I create an invoice from an estimate, even if I just do it partially, I don't do the estimate in full, it closes out that estimate. There's no way to do progress invoicing in QBO directly as a feature. There are some workarounds that people have suggested, and it involves copying the estimate and renumbering it, or copying and then doing a new invoice and renumbering, and it's quite cumbersome, tedious, and honestly, I haven't really met any clients that are doing that because it's more work, and usually because you're copying estimates and renumbering them and doing that all the time, it doesn't really work very well. It's kind of harder, and it creates kind of more problems. So if you have clients that need what I say is robust job costing, if they truly need progress invoicing, especially where they're billing a third of the job now and a third later and a third upon completion, there's a workaround, but it's very cumbersome and tedious, and I suggest you try it out before you try implementing that with yourself or with a client. So test that out. Also, when it comes to allocating the employee's labor, payroll costs, you would have to do a manual journal entry. So if you have lots of jobs and lots of employees, again, that's something that can be very cumbersome. Now, they're upgrading this all the time, so I encourage you to keep checking back, but just beware at this point, it would work for basic job costing. Hold off on the more robust job costing or test it out before you start trying to implement that. Now, I know TSheets is trying to help with this, as well as Intuit. They're trying to help improve things and make it easier to do that for us. And we've got Victoria on from TSheets. It does integrate with the desktop version. It's fabulous. I love TSheets. Victoria, are you on?
I'm here.
All right, Victoria, I'm going to go ahead and did you want to take the ball and show some slides, or do you want me to control it? You want me to pass it to you?
If you would like to go ahead and pass it over to me, I'm actually going to show a little bit of my screen.
I thought so. Okay, if you go ahead and click on that, you should be able to accept, and we can now see your screen. So I'm going to mute myself and let you take it.
Thank you. So as you heard Michelle say, TSheets does try to cover the gaps where there's a little bit of lack of job costing. And what we do is we do time tracking. So we take the time tracking element that is involved in job costing and all the labor costs and try to make that as easy and straightforward as possible. So within TSheets, there are a number of reports that you can run within our system that are going to make it so that it's even faster and easier to get all of that labor costing data, as well as our QuickBooks desktop integration is quick, seamless, and puts all the data right into the job costing reports for you. With QuickBooks Online, since the reporting detail isn't quite there yet, we do export the hours over, so the hours go in for invoices and they're ready to go for creating vendor bills as well. So if you track time for a vendor or your vendor's tracking time, those will all show up under your expense detail, but the actual payroll itself doesn't show up in the job costing expenses yet, as Michelle had just mentioned. So within TSheets, what we allow you to do is, with our QuickBooks integration, and both desktop and online allow you to track detail, is that we allow you to track time against a specific customer and job, as well as track it to a specific service item or activity, and mark the time as billable or not, which makes it ready to go for invoices, or you have it for running a report to see overhead hours versus just total number of hours worked. And we also have the ability to track time against specific classes as well. So you can actually get all the detailed hourly breakouts that you need and get all of that information to show up over in QuickBooks without having to manually enter any of it or without having to use any terrifying spreadsheets. Your employees just fill it out as they go. As you can see on my time card here, I've got the service item and the billable detail. So what we have are quite a few different reports, and one report that I'd like to point out is the project report. Now this report, while you can run it in any number of different formats or date ranges, we're going to take a look at this particular pay period here, and I'm just going to go ahead and run the full overview report so that you can take a look at what detail there is, but do know that you can restrict it by specific employee or by specific group if you've classified your employees out by group, as well as you have the flexibility to customize how you view the detail, so hours and minutes, hours, minutes, and seconds, or decimal. All I would recommend is making sure that it matches what you have set up in QuickBooks, since that's typically what you'll be comparing it to. So once you run the report in TSheets, you actually get an interactive graph that you can go through and break down the total number of hours worked. So you can see the number of hours worked per customer here, and simply by clicking on any one of those, you actually can break down the detail even further. And then if you want to go back to the regular report, you just hit this X up here and it clears that filter. So we can see all the hours broken out by customer. We can see all the hours broken out by groups of which group has tracked time. We can break it out by employee, and we just classify this employees graph to include your subcontractors as well as your employees, so your W-2s versus your 1099s. And then also billable. If you've marked the time as billable or not, you get to see that breakout here as well. And then you can see it by service item also. So that way you get the same flexibility detail that you would in, say, a QuickBooks desktop report, but in this case, where I've linked this account with QuickBooks Online, I actually have the ability to see the same breakout detail of all of my timesheets just by clicking on the reports within TSheets. So if I go ahead and narrow it down to one customer here, I see only one group has worked on it, and I see which 3 employees that was, as well as whether the time was billable or not, and which service items were worked as well. And I can at any time view the actual individual timesheets just like you would be able to as you filter down through the reports in QuickBooks Desktop, but you can actually see those here in this detailed breakout. And of course, we do have the ability to enter in any notes that you may be tracking. So if you do need to record notes on any of your specific entries, those will actually flow straight across to QuickBooks. Now, as we mentioned for QuickBooks Desktop, it does... Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Before you move forward, I wanted to answer a question. This question was asked about 4 times. The report you're showing, it's only in function of hours, not function of amount, correct? So not
correct.
Not
it's just showing the total number of hours.
Hours, okay. And you can't
exactly.
You can't see it in terms of payroll costs or anything like that, correct? Just hours.
Correct. Within TSheets, we're just going to have the reports on the hours. Now, what we do have is the ability to export it as a CSV file. And then that spreadsheet would actually give you the ability to enter in their wage in a column, and that would give you that total if you wanted it, but that would be done outside of the TSheets program itself.
Okay, so what you're saying, Victoria, Michelle specifically said you cannot do payroll job costing in QBO. But if you have TSheets and you are tracking all your employees' hours by job, you could essentially, if you really wanted to kind of estimate your payroll cost per employee, you could use TSheets reporting tool, like getting the total number of hours per job, multiply it times their wage and whatever the labor burden is, and you could estimate your total labor cost by job using TSheets by doing that sequence of events, correct?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And if there are more questions that come up, just interrupt me. That's fine. I have a bad habit of once I start talking, it's hard to make me stop. So. All right, so then on the QuickBooks side, as we've mentioned for QuickBooks Desktop, all the hours do flow over a little neater and a little bit cleaner. What we can see in the reports on the QuickBooks Online side is if you go under that same income by customer summary report that Michelle was showing us, then we can actually customize it to include all expenses. So if we go under here and not just the specified ones, if we run the report, then actually see the not specified hours. So you'll see it show up in this particular report, but it's not giving you that breakdown by individual job. So it's not giving you quite the job costing detail that you're looking for, though it does show up on there. So in the meantime, all the timesheets for TSheets, when they export over to QuickBooks Desktop or QuickBooks Online, they're all going to the same place. They're all going to show up here in this weekly timesheet. And instead of having to manually go through and enter in all of this detail, that's where TSheets actually comes in as most of the time saving, is that the time automatically shows up as being billable or not, actually linked to the specific customer and job as well as service item. If you wanted it to, it could also be linked to a specific class. I don't have classes set up in this particular demo account, so those aren't showing here. But then that's how you get your timesheet information and it's ready to go for payroll, or you have this breakout information here where you can create your invoices directly from it to create the expense portion of the actual tracking.
And Victoria, we did have another slew of questions.
Perfect.
So there were some questions about how the data syncs and exactly
yeah.
the role that TSheets plays. So one thing to clarify is TSheets is your timesheet management system. It comes into QuickBooks. Somebody's asking, is it automatically? Is there a sync? So if it's QBO, that would be automatic, correct? That's sort of behind the scenes.
Exactly. What would happen is
if it's QuickBooks Desktop, how does it work?
Great question. So for both QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online, you're going to have this menu inside your TSheets dashboard, which is where I'm logged into right now. And from this TSheets dashboard, this is actually where you would go to import new data. So that's where you import your customers, your jobs, your employees, things like that from the QuickBooks side. And then this export is where you would go to trigger all of your timesheet data to be exported over to the QuickBooks side. And for QuickBooks Online, you're right, it's an immediate sync. It goes straight over and it shows up in that weekly timesheet. For QuickBooks Desktop right now, we actually use the Intuit Sync Manager, so it's still the same process on the TSheet side, you hit this Export All Approved Time button. All the timesheets go over to QuickBooks, and then you go into your QuickBooks desktop account. You'll go, I believe it's under File, and then Sync, and then there's a Start Sync Now option, and that would get that Intuit Sync Manager to sync down all those timesheets from the cloud environment down to your actual QuickBooks company file.
And going back to job costing, another question was, somebody was saying, hey, I can put timesheets in QuickBooks Desktop, and I can job cost my payroll by using timesheets in QuickBooks Desktop. Somebody's asking, why do I need TSheets? And maybe you can answer that better than I can, right, Victoria?
Yeah. So with using QuickBooks Desktop to enter all of your timesheets, that means that you or your bookkeeper or one individual has to go in and manually enter all of that timesheet information, and you're not going to get the exact start and stop times. You're not going to be able to keep the timesheet data DCAA compliant because it won't have the actual individual submitting it. So with TSheets, we allow the individual users to actually track their time. People can clock in and out on the go. You can have managers monitor where people are. Our mobile apps actually track GPS information. So if you need to know where your employees are clocking in and out from, TSheets will actually pull GPS information like you can see here if they're using the mobile apps to track time. It gives the individual employees the flexibility to clock in and clock out, and it gives you the ability to record these accurate timestamps, and that's what helps keep your clients, or if you're using it for yourself, everybody DCAA and Department of Labor compliant.
Perfect, DCAA compliant. That was a question that somebody had asked. And then people asked about syncing to other payroll services that is not QuickBooks Desktop or QuickBooks Online Payroll. So what other payroll services you can sync to?
Right now, TSheets has a direct integration with Zen Payroll as well as QuickBooks. So much like you see this QuickBooks menu here, you just have an export button and that would send your time straight over to Zen Payroll. In addition to that, we actually have a number of flat file export reports that integrate into quite a few other payroll systems, including ADP,
so ADP
Paychecks,
right.
Yeah.
Exactly, perfect. Okay. And then somebody else was asking about the work. So I guess people are still trying to piece things together about how this works into the whole workflow. So as a bookkeeper, as an accountant, as the office manager, the HR manager, you're waiting for your staff to enter their own time, correct? Enter their own job cost information. And then your job as a bookkeeper, HR manager is simply to I guess, approve these before they go into payroll, correct?
Exactly. So that way you no longer have to manually enter any of it. You just get to review the information, make sure it looks correct, send it over to QuickBooks, and then from there you can run any of your regular job costing reports. You can review profitability, profit and loss, all that extra detail. So TSheets is kind of the precursor.
So I'm going to break in here for just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and launch the CPE poll question in just a minute. But Victoria, I know you guys have a new certification because we do have lots of questions. Lots of people want to know more about TSheets and how it works. Can you tell us about the new certification that you have?
Absolutely. So right now we have a certification program that allows you to get certified in TSheets, and it would be a much more thorough demo of what TSheets has to offer, what our product really is, and then of course how we relate to job costing, but also how we save on clients on payroll and things like that. And we actually have it on December 19th. It will be another webinar very similar to this one. It's worth 1.5 CPE credits, and if you go straight to tsheets.com/QB Pro, as you can see here, that will actually give you the ability to get registered for a certification program and be certified in TSheets and be a certified affiliate, as well as the ability to just register to become a TSheets Pro, which means that you get a free account for yourself to test and play around with. You get a 20% commission on all the referrals, and you get a discount for every single client you refer to us.
And Victoria,
Very
on top
cool.
of all that, the certification is free, correct? There's no cost to getting certified.
Yes, great question. There is no cost to getting certified. We just want to make sure that you get more information about TSheets and that you know all the background to it. It is a little bit more technical, but we go through it very, very in depth, so you'll know quite a bit by the end.
I think it's great. I know I heard a lot of people who were getting certified at this leader conference. So I think that's great, especially for people who are looking to add some more specialties to their practice, especially before the year starts and before we get into busy season. I think that's a great opportunity for some people that might be interested in that. Okay, so I am putting up the poll question real quickly. While we're doing that, we did have some other questions about TSheets. Are you all looking to add scheduling to your products? So that scheduling can be compared to the actual?
Great question. So right now we do have a scheduling feature. It's currently in beta, as you see by this fun little icon here, and it allows you to create a schedule for your employees, send out reminders, things like that. We don't have anything that does reporting on scheduled versus actual, but that's why we consider this feature in beta, is that we're adding new features to it all the time. So hopefully we'll see that soon.
Okay, yeah, and right now I've got the poll question up, so people are seeing that. If you need to answer that poll question, that's okay. Anybody that needs to answer the poll question, I'm going to give you guys about 10 more seconds. So if you need to answer that poll question, please do so quickly, and I will close it. I know some people have a commitment at the top of the hour. I can stay for another minute or two to answer a few other questions. How about you, Victoria? Could you answer a couple other questions?
Yeah, I can hang around if that's all right.
Okay, yeah, because we've had several questions about what is the cost. How much does TSheets cost? How many subscribers? How many users per subscription? Can you answer a couple of those questions? And I'm going to go ahead and close the poll question. It's the last call on that, if anybody wants to answer it. So can you talk about that as well as provide your contact information?
Absolutely. So the TSheets pricing, it's a $20 monthly base fee plus $5 per user per month, and is subscription-based, so it's just that month-to-month fee. There are no startup fees, no extra incurred. You used TSheets too much this month, or you exported too many times, or anything like that. It's just this flat fee. If you had, say, 10 employees, that's $50 for each of them, plus the $20 monthly base fee, so that's about $70 a month. And then with if you actually sign up to be a TSheets Pro, then you will get that 20% commission on each of those clients that you refer, but you'll also get a 10% coupon code that you can pass along to your clients, so that way you can give them a 10% discount on their monthly fee.
Wonderful. So let me ask you a question. So let's say I decide I want to do this certification and I want to start using TSheets, and I start, setting it up with some clients and all this, and I start getting the 20% affiliate fee and things like that. But then I have some questions, or I need some support. Are you all there to continue supporting people as they go along, and how does that work?
Definitely, and that's actually the #1 thing. If you go to the Intuit App Center and you take a look at our reviews, the #1 thing that people rant and rave about is our support. We have the best support in the industry, and while this is our whole team, this is not just the support team. We do have the ability, you can reach out to us by email, or we have this live chat functionality here. You can click on that and reach out to us that way. We also have our phone. You can call us, and we love to talk to people there as well. And it's all U.S.-based support. We're actually based out of Boise, Idaho, and we're open from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Mountain Time. So we're here happy to help anytime we possibly can.
And I will say, Victoria, I set you up on that one because I've heard so many good things about you guys, and I know you are awesome. Your whole team is amazing, and you all are really setting the bar high for all these other apps and vendors on providing support and training and things like that. I think you guys are doing a fabulous job, not to mention amazing marketing and fun stuff.
Well, thank you very much. We love hearing that.
Marketing for sure. Marketing for sure. I want to say this. I've known TSheets for maybe 3 years, since I really started working with it. And one thing I learned most about TSheets is about their marketing. So, we've seen how TSheets is very creative on reaching out to their influencers, to their pro advisors. You guys create these programs. You guys put your money where your mouth is in the customer service side. Like Michelle said, every one of our customers, when we ask about TSheets, they don't say, oh, it's cool, it's in my phone. They don't talk about any of the actual function. They talk about when I call, my problem gets solved, or whatever, not a problem. But so that's an important piece. TSheets price themselves in marketing and customer service. So if you have a free certification program, and every single accountant pro advisor can do it for free, learn about it, get a discount, get a free account, and also be able to get commission on sales. This is something that every single QuickBooks consultant should have in their arsenal. Yes, maybe you don't specialize in timesheets, maybe you don't specialize in payroll, but it will be a great value-added service as a consultant to now have one more sort of item in your arsenal to consult your clients with. So I want to make sure I want to add that because that's just so essential to our practice.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate hearing that. It's very flattering to hear that, especially from two people like you two. You're absolutely brilliant, and I love the QB Power Hour. This has been awesome. I feel like I've learned a lot today.
Well, thank you, Victoria, and thank you, TSheets, for being part of QB Power Hour. We look forward to having you guys in some future webinars and things that we have coming up. And thank you, everybody, for joining us again today. It's been another fabulous QB Power Hour. Help us keep spreading the word about QB Power Hour. You will get an email after this with some follow-up information as well as the link to the recording. If you have questions about CPE, remember, allow 3 weeks to get those certificates emailed to you. Continue to reach out to Hector and I on social media and our various channels, and we hope to see you all in a couple of weeks for the next one. Hector, any final words?
Yeah, so we're very excited about the December 18th Power Hour. Michelle and I have spent about 3 months evaluating each of the apps. Like Michelle has her own top 5 favorite apps. I have my own top 5 favorite apps. We asked our colleagues. We are trying to narrow down which are the top 5 apps that will transform your practice, you know, whether it's something you recommend to your clients or increases your workflow. So we're still working through picking those apps. And, you know, I won't hint who's one of them, but maybe you're looking at them. But so in December, we're still narrowing down which are the top 5 apps that both Michelle and I agree. And although we won't do a lot of QuickBooks related stuff, we'll do all about apps. It should be a really, really fun webinar. And Michelle, can you switch back to the survey question? Because we do have a lot of new people in Power Hour today, and we'd love to get their feedback and survey and you know, give us feedback. And happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and I'll tell you, I'll be thinking about you all next week. I am thrilled to say that I'm going to be going to a Dutch Caribbean island called Curaçao next week, where it's nice and warm. So I won't have turkey and I won't have pig for Thanksgiving, but I will be thinking of you all when I'm down there flying out. But here's the link for the survey. And again, thank you, everybody. Victoria, can you give out your email address? I know somebody was asking about that.
Oh, yeah. So you can reach any of our support team just at help@tsheets.com, or you can reach out to our pro support team specifically at prosupport@tsheets.com, and those go straight to me and the other leads for the pro team.
Okay, wonderful. All right, well, thank you all. The next QB Power Hour is December 4th. Put that on your schedule. Make sure you're going to join us for that. And in the meantime, those of you that are in the U.S. celebrating Thanksgiving next week, I hope everybody has a good, safe Thanksgiving and enjoy it with your family and friends. Again, thank you, Victoria and TSheets. Hector, great as always. I will talk with you later. I hope everybody has a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.